A crocodile the size of a bus ripped him off the riverbank, crushed his chest, and dragged him under. And yet, 3 days later, they found his body, breathing, bleeding, alive. This isn't myth. It's a forensic mystery buried in Ice Age mud. And what happened between the first scream and the final breath will haunt you. How did a prehistoric human survive the jaws of a monster that could bite through bone like butter? You've heard of saber-tooths. You've heard of dire wolves. But this beast was older, bigger, meaner. Deinosuchus, a prehistoric crocodilian the size of a bus, with a bite force strong enough to explode skulls. And for a long time we thought it never crossed paths with early humans. We were wrong, because in the mangrove swamps of southern Europe 30,000 years ago, they found a skeleton, one leg gone, pelvis shattered, torso scarred with U-shaped punctures, but the bone had regrown. That meant one thing. He survived the attack, and when they traced the sediment, the blood, and the fossilized bite patterns, what they found was one of the most brutal survival stories in human history. He wasn't hunting predators. He was checking his fishing traps. A shallow tide pool, some sharpened sticks, a pile of drying fish. The water was still. But then, the stillness moved. His dog, a lean, wolf-like companion, growled once. Hackles raised, then vanished, dragged under the water like it was never there. No splash, just a ripple, just silence. He turned too late. The water erupted, not with a splash, but with violence. Deinosuchus, 9 tons of coiled muscle, armored scales, and conical teeth, each the size of a banana. An ancient super predator older than fear itself. It hit him like a battering ram carved from bone, slammed into his hip, clamped down, and twisted. His pelvis cracked like dry wood. Air left his lungs in one breathless scream. Then he was gone, swallowed by the river that had fed him for years. Crocodilians don't kill you by biting. They kill you by spinning. The moment those jaws lock, they roll, dislocate, snap, shred. It's not just to drown you, it's to tear you apart. He was flipped 4 times. Each twist wrung the life out of him. His thigh bone snapped like driftwood, his shoulder wrenched from its socket, his lungs filled with mud, his mouth with blood. The world spun into a brown-red blur. Up was down, pain was everything. But he got lucky, because it didn't spin long. Why? Maybe it was old. Maybe it had lost a limb in some other battle. Maybe, just maybe, he stabbed its eye during the roll. He remembers jabbing wildly, his fingers gripping a rock or antler or nothing at all, because when the water settled, he wasn't dead. And the beast? It was gone. And somehow, he was floating. He had 1 arm, 1 leg, and half a lung. But he was alive, and he did what Cro-Magnon men did best. He moved, crawled through sawgrass, tore himself across bark, rock, and mud. Every push felt like his bones were on fire. His ribcage caved inward with every breath. But still, he dragged himself forward. He left a 70-foot trail of blood, broken teeth, spit, and sheer willpower. Flies swarmed, vultures circled. The sun blistered his back while the mud chilled his chest. Modern ER doctors say no human today would have lasted more than 10 minutes. He lasted 12 hours. 12 hours of silence. He didn't scream. He didn't pray. He didn't cry for his mother. He bit a stick, cracked 2 molars, and kept going. Because something deeper than fear pulled him forward. Survival wasn't a choice. It was instinct. He could have died quietly, but he didn't. He came back, 3 days later, on a crude crutch, with his leg packed in clay, moss, and bark, Every step was agony, but pain no longer mattered. He wasn't there to heal. He was there to finish it. He stood at the same bank where the beast struck, built a blind of reeds and branches, camouflaged with mud and blood. He sat motionless, watching, breathing, waiting. For hours, maybe days, through storms, insects, fever dreams, until the water moved again. A ripple, a shadow. It was back, and so was he. It lunged again, same power, same violence. But this time, he was ready. No panic, no flinch, just vengeance in motion. He jammed the spear, a fire-hardened shaft tipped with obsidian, into the roof of its mouth, up through soft tissue, toward the brainstem. It shrieked, a sound no human had ever heard and lived to remember. But he didn't let go, even as its jaws crushed down, slicing tendons, splintering bone. He held, both hands locked in a death grip, pushed deeper and deeper. Mud and blood sprayed into the night air. The beast twisted, rolled, tried to drag him under again, but he clung to the spear like it was his soul, until it stopped thrashing, until its tail gave one last twitching shiver. Then silence. The monster was dead, and so was the fear. They found both bodies, side by side in the same stretch of ancient riverbed, his skeleton twisted, fused, and missing pieces. One arm permanently dislocated, a femur healed at the wrong angle, ribs like bent rebar, but healed. He lived years after the attack. The croc? Its skull was massive, nearly 6 feet long, and right between the eyes, a circular puncture. Obsidian still embedded deep in the bone. The spear strike had pierced the brainstem, a perfect kill shot. Archaeologists couldn't believe it, but every mark told the same story. A man, a monster, a rematch, and one impossible win. They've reconstructed the scene in museums, but glass displays can't capture the rage, the will, the blood in the water. They just whisper the ending. One of them crawled away, the other didn't. This wasn't luck, it was biology. Cro-Magnons had thicker bones, more red blood cells, denser muscle fibers. Their pain threshold was off the charts. Their recovery speed, borderline superhuman. And more importantly, they were angry. They had no morphine, no hospitals, just adrenaline, fire, and revenge. And it worked. Modern forensic reconstructions show his right arm was rebuilt using bark and sinew as splints. His wounds were cauterized with ash, packed with honey, charcoal, moss, not for comfort, for survival. The spearhead? Volcanic glass sharpened to a surgical edge. This was not some dumb brute. He was an innovator, a field surgeon, a hunter, a warrior, and in his own blood-soaked way, a scientist of survival. They didn't just endure the Ice Age. They engineered their way through it with instinct, violence, and bone-deep will. This story survived, not because of bones, but because it was told, painted on a cave wall, etched into a spear, whispered to children before they slept. Beware the water, respect the beast, but if it comes, strike harder. And now, 30,000 years later, we still tell it. Because somewhere in your DNA is his fury. Do you ever feel weak? Scared? Like the world might swallow you? Just remember, you're the descendant of someone who crawled away from death and came back with a weapon. Like, subscribe, share if you bled through that story. And tell us, what would you do if a crocodile the size of a bus tried to eat you alive?